I am always fascinated by how the right wing media, in particular, will present certain issues regardless of how much information has been provided, how much professionals say, how much other organisations will say that contradicts their version of events. So there's this bloke by the name of Gerard Henderson, who himself is a right wing crazy person, an elderly man, but there again, at my age, should I criticise? No, not really. But he is a man who presents himself on Sky News often as being someone who has all the goods because he's been involved in politics and as a journalist for many, many years. But he made a statement in the Australian that I could not help but challenge. And so I'm going to show you the statement in a moment, and then I'm going to demonstrate to you how wrong he is. And it is disturbing that people have certain versions of events and will stick by that version, regardless of how the evidence might indicate something completely different. And in Henderson's case, clearly an intelligent man, clearly a journalist of long standing, but nevertheless holds a certain view that he will not shift from. And this is so typical of what we see, particularly in Murdoch press, and in this case, the Australian, and of what we see often on Sky News. So he wrote in this article, and it's just going to quote this one bit for you. Certainly, Palestinian civilians in Gaza, along with Hamas fighters, have been killed in the conflict, as sadly happens in all wars. But there's no evidence that Israel has deliberately targeted civilians. On the contrary, it has given advance notices of many of its attacks to prevent civilian casualties. Now, we know that that's simply not true. But nevertheless, no one ever, what really frustrates me, I guess, about sitting on the side of politics that I do is that very few people challenge these particular ideas that are presented by the extreme right-wing media, because there is evidence, plenty of it. In fact, it needs to be noted that the United Nations Human Rights Commission came up with this statement. The Commission has been investigating the events on and since 7th October 23 for the first 2 years and concluded that Israeli authorities and Israel security forces committed 4 of 5 genocidal acts defined by the 1948 Conventions on the Prevention of Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, namely killing, causing seriously bodily and mental harm, deliberately inflicting conditions of life calculated to bring about the destruction of the Palestinians in whole or in part, and imposing measures intended to prevent births. Explicit statements by Israel's civilian and military authorities and the pattern of conduct of the Israel security forces indicates that the genocidal act was committed with intent to destroy, in whole or in part, Palestinians in the Gaza Strip as a group. The Commission finds that Israel is responsible for the commission of genocide in Gaza. And Navi Pillay, chair of the Commission, it is clear that there is an intent to destroy the Palestinians in Gaza through acts that meet the criteria set forth by the Genocidal Convention. I'm sorry for the hesitation there, but I found it difficult to read that on my screen for varying reasons. But I guess the point I'm making is that statements made by clowns like Gerard Henderson tend to focus primarily on their particular version of events, filtered through their own dedication and their own belief that there is nothing that Israel can do or that the IDF does that is contravening the law. And I find this extremely distressing, because if these people like Henderson, who's not an idiot, even though he acts like one, must understand that the evidence is there. It is clear. The United Nations has come out and stated that it is a genocide. They have the evidence They have civilians. They haven't just come up with this willy-nilly idea that a genocide is being committed. They have sought out information that justifies their conclusion. Yet people like Gerard Henderson, the Murdoch press, the right-wing media in particular, fail to report the truth around what's happening in genocide, in Gaza, and the genocide that is being committed there. And I think that given that the moment that we're so busily focusing on what's happening in Venezuela, that we must not forget, ever forget, what's happening in Gaza and in the Middle East right at this particular point in time. Because the war continues, people's lives continue to be lost, children are being killed and murdered by the IDF, and we need to make a stand, a continual stand against the genocide being committed by the Israel government. Now, let me know what you think in the comment section below. Remember to share my videos, subscribe to them, and like the videos as well. Thanks very much for being with me. Take care.